They vanished without a trace. They hid the evidence. But every secret has a file. The truth is hidden. We find it.
Deep in the northern Ural Mountains, the winter landscape is unforgiving. Temperatures plunge to -30°C, and the wind whips relentlessly across isolated, jagged rock formations. When a massive search effort finally reached the slopes of Kholetsyak in February 1959, they found an abandoned tent, partially collapsed under the heavy snow. But investigators quickly noticed something strange. The physical tears in the canvas proved the tent had been slashed open from the inside out. The 9 hikers were elite mountaineers, carrying Grade 2 certifications and heavy winter gear designed for professional-level survival in sub-zero terrain. Yet when searchers located their bodies scattered down the mountain, several of these experts were found inexplicably stripped down to their underwear or missing their boots. The autopsies revealed even deeper anomalies. Some victims had massive internal blunt force trauma, crushed chests and fractured skulls, but the skin outside showed 0 cuts, bruises, or soft tissue damage. It leaves us with a profound paradox. What precise sequence of events forces 9 disciplined experts to intentionally destroy their only shelter, abandon their survival gear, and run to their deaths in the freezing dark without a single visible external threat? Naturally, the initial investigation looked for a physical attacker, perhaps a territorial dispute with local indigenous groups, or a sudden strike by large wildlife. This forensic schematic shows the campsite perimeter. Notice that there are exactly 9 sets of footprints leading away from the tent. There are no overlapping tracks, and entirely absent are any inbound prints from animals or other humans. With local assailants logically ruled out, the timeline of 1959 pushed investigators toward a Cold War hypothesis, an accidental encounter with a covert Soviet weapons test. 2 specific details kept this theory alive. Other hiking groups miles away reported seeing glowing orange orbs in the night sky, and labs detected trace amounts of radioactive isotopes on a few pieces of the victims' clothing. But military testing zones are chaotic and destructive. Searchers scoured the mountain and found absolutely no localized explosive debris, no chemical scorch marks, and no logical motive for a military cover-up that would leave the bodies easily discoverable on a public slope. A human squad, a frightened animal, or a detonated weapon all leave physical footprints or debris. Since none exist here, the catalyst had to be invisible, purely environmental, or entirely psychological. This forces us into the realm of natural physics, where the leading scientific explanation centers on a highly specific event known as a slab avalanche. This cross-section illustrates how a slab avalanche differs from a typical powdery snowslide. Instead of loose snow cascading down, a weak underlying layer collapses, allowing a massive, dense block of ice and snow to detach as one solid piece. If that solid block slid directly onto the tent while the hiker slept, it perfectly explains the autopsy reports. The immense weight transfers heavy, blunt force directly into the occupants, crushing ribs and skulls, without the abrasive friction that causes surface cuts. If not a wall of snow, another meteorological phenomenon offers a different trigger: the Kármán vortex street effect, a process where high winds hit a rounded mountain peak and create violent, swirling tornadoes of air. These swirling vortexes can act like a giant musical instrument, producing infrasound. These are extremely low-frequency sound waves, dropping below the threshold of human hearing, but they still physically vibrate against the human body. When infrasound frequencies resonate with our internal organs and the inner ear, the neurological disruption bypasses rational thought entirely. It can induce sudden, debilitating, and blind panic, compelling people to flee enclosed spaces immediately. Both of these natural extremes account for the site's deepest contradictions, providing a mechanism for massive internal trauma without warning, or a psychological trigger for an immediate, desperate flight into the dark. Today, advanced snow dynamic simulations, using the exact topography of the mountain and weather data from that night, heavily support the slab avalanche theory as the initiating event. But physics only explains the snow, not the psychology. Even our most rigorous mathematical models struggle to rationalize why freezing, injured people would systematically shed the few layers of warm clothing they still had. Once out in the exposure of -30 degrees, the mountain's environment took over. The unforgiving cold immediately weaponized their vulnerability, turning a chaotic moment of flight into an unrecoverable, fatal error. Most wilderness tragedies leave behind a clear narrative of getting lost or freezing. Dyatlov Pass obsesses us because the physical evidence is completely alien to standard survival failure: a severed tent, missing clothes, and internal trauma identical to a high-speed car crash. The incident endures because it strips away our sense of control. It proves that even armed with modern forensics, logic, and survival training, nature's chaotic extremes can easily overpower human expertise, leaving behind a terrifying and permanent mystery.